Hey guys, Real 2K Insider back with another episode of the NBA 2K roster review. We are recapping games from January 5th, 2021. There were 5 games. Game logs are in the description. The roster used, that's also in the description. You can find it by looking at your YouTube page. All right, so let's start with the Brooklyn Nets. They destroyed the Utah Jazz 130-96. They went up to 4-4 on the season, and the really big news is there was a lineup shakeup. Jarrett Allen started. He had 19 points, 18 rebounds, was 8 of 9 from the field, 3 steals, 2 blocks. We just updated his rating 2 days ago and talked about how he really should be the starter for this team. So give Steve Nash and the team credit. They did not waste time making what should have been an obvious change from the jump, as Jarrett Allen's earned this opportunity with his play over the last 3 years. So hopefully this definitely sticks over the long term. Taurean Prince, he moved into the starting lineup while Joe Harris came off the bench. I'm not sure if these changes are going to be permanent. It might be something they were experimenting with. But Harris came off the bench, and I think this might have been to help get Caris LeVert going, so he doesn't have to carry such a heavy burden off the bench, as LeVert's been struggling. But he had 24 points, 5 assists on 9 of 18 shooting in this game to bounce back from a couple bad games. Bruce Brown also started rather than TLC. And he had 6 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, shot 3 of 5 from the field. Basically his most meaningful minutes of the season. TLC also played well with 11 minutes off the bench. I think the team probably would just prefer to have TLC's energy with the second unit, plus TLC, LeVert, and Harris. They all have experience from playing together last year, so that makes sense also. And also, just in generally, it makes sense to pair the best defensive players with KD and Kyrie, since they can carry the offensive load. So Bruce Brown and Taurean Prince, for example, you don't need too much more offense beyond Kyrie and KD. I think that's, especially since KD's basically back to being himself. Speaking of KD, though, he actually sat this one out. He's still sidelined with COVID protocols. It's worth noting that he had coronavirus in June, but he's still required to miss time per league rules, as I guess he was exposed via however contact tracing works. So even though he himself is not contagious for it, he might be a carrier for it. I don't know how. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how all that works. So he has to sit out for a week. So Jeff Green started in his place, and it's pretty impressive that the Nets did not need Durant to win a game by 34 points. So going over to the Utah Jazz, who got roasted. Donovan Mitchell, he had 31 points on 10 of 22 shooting in only 30 minutes, but he didn't get much help as the rest of the starters combined to score 32 points. Bojan Bogdanovich, he had 4 points on 2 of 7 shooting. He had a good game in his last one, but this was kind of back to normal for him. He's only averaging 14 points per game, down from 20 last year. He's shooting 38% from the field, down from 45%, though he's still shooting 40% from three-point range. So it's his finishing so far that has fallen off. Last year, he finished like 69% of his shots at the rim. He doesn't have a high sample right now, but he's in like the mid 40s for that. And consistency, where that at? We're going to drop that 10 points, and that's going to drop his rating by a point. Hopefully he can get himself going at some point. Going on over to the Lakers, who moved up to 6-2 by beating the Lakers 94-92. LeBron, he had 26, 11, and 7 with 11 of 20 from the field. Anthony Davis, he had 26, 10, and 4, 3 steals, 3 blocks, 10 of 20 from the field, and he had another 4 of 10 3-point game. So he's shooting the 3 ball a little bit better. Maybe we boost him a point or two in that area. Kyle Kuzma, he started again for KCP, but he only had 5 points on 2 of 5 shooting. For the most part, the Lakers I haven't felt the need to change any of their ratings, as they have been super consistent. The Grizzlies, they haven't been consistent. They're lacking offensive firepower without their stars. And they really need Jonas Valanciunas and Brandon Clark to step up in the absence of Morant, but especially Jaren Jackson, who they knew they were going to be without to start the year. So both of those guys are playing well below what they usually do. Jonas is shooting a career low 51% from the field. Last year he was like 58%, I think. And Clark, he shot 62% last year, but is only 44% this year, so his efficiency completely fell off. I'm gonna hold off on re-rating them for like another game or two, but look for them to both drop probably 2 to 3 points in the overall rating department. The Grizzlies did get a couple players back from injury. D'Anthony Melton, he made his season debut and had 12 points and 5 assists in 16 minutes. He also had a sequence where he blocked Anthony Davis on one end and then posterized somebody else on the Lakers on the other end. Taylor Horton-Tucker was on the receiving end of a Melton poster. So I switched his position to point guard as he didn't play any two guard in this game. He played all of the minutes at point guard that Tyus Jones did not. And Grayson Allen, he also returned, but instead of starting, he came off the bench as the team started Dylan Brooks, Kyle Anderson, and Brandon Clark. So I think because Grayson Allen was struggling anyway, and because he came off the bench last year, I think it makes sense to shift everybody's position. So we inserted Clark, and that means we changed Kyle Anderson to the 3, and we shifted Dylan Brooks back to shooting guard, where they started last year. So let's go on to the Denver Nuggets. They moved up to 3-4, beating the Timberwolves again, 123 to 116. Jokic had 33 points, 15 rebounds, 6 assists. It's the first game that he didn't hit double-figure assists. He was more aggressive shooting the ball because he was just being guarded by barbecue chicken. Naz Reid had 5 fouls in 10 minutes tonight, while Ed Davis had 4 fouls in 14 minutes. So the Timberwolves didn't have any answer for him. JaMychal Green also played well with 17 points in 20 minutes, 5 of 8 from the field. The Timberwolves are in trouble. So let's check them out. They dropped to 2-5 on the year. They've lost 5 in a row since Karl Anthony Towns went down. D'Angelo Russell had season highs with 29 points and 11 assists. He shot 9 of 20 from the field. Juan Hernan-Gomez, he broke out with 25 points, 8 rebounds, 10 of 14 from the field. He only had 19 points in his first 6 games combined, so besting that by a lot in this game. So not touching his rating off of this because it just cancels out his other 6 bad games. Jared Vanderbilt, he played 24 minutes at center. As we mentioned, the other 2 guys were in foul trouble and very ineffective in this game. So Vanderbilt, he had the best game of his career with 11 points, 5 rebounds, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Shot 4 of 5 from the field. He's a center in the body of a small forward. He drew Dennis Rodman comparisons in college. He probably won't get time at center once Cat comes back, but I do think he's a little bit of a sleeper at the power forward spot since they're not really getting much out of Hernan-Gomez and Layman. Since Cat is one of the best shooting centers in league history, they can get away with playing a more with a non-shooting 4. Essentially, Cat would be the 4 and Vanderbilt would be the 5 crashing the rim in that scenario. So I want to see Vanderbilt get more time to prove himself. These guys are kind of, they are what they are at this point. Ricky Rubio, I really feel bad for him because he's coming off of arguably the best season of his career, and he may be a fan favorite in Minnesota, but he just doesn't fit on this team. We questioned the fit when they acquired him to begin with, and was he going to be able to play with D'Angelo Russell? And really, the answer is pretty much no. His numbers are down across the board. We're going to drop his 3-point shot. A lot of his ratings are going to go back down to where they were at in 2019, which is he was playing next to Donovan Mitchell and not really fitting well next to him. So let's see. We're going to drop his foul rate. Shot IQ can go down a couple points. His assist rate is down to a career low 24%. Last year he was 5th in the NBA with 40%. So the double point guard, his lineup just doesn't he doesn't have the ball in his hands enough to really make too much of a difference. What else? Offensive consistency we're dropping down. and his defensive consistency as well, as the Timberwolves are the worst defensive team in the NBA, and part of that is, that falls on everybody for the most part. So all this just drops him to an 81 overall. That's basically where I had him at in 2019, but he's playing worse than that at the moment. He might drop even further, maybe to like 79 or so. Rubio still does a lot of things that don't show up in the box score, but yeah, I mean, he's playing on one of the worst teams in the NBA, so that's just going to reflect in his ratings until he gets traded or something. D'Angelo Russell, he had a good game, but for the most part, pretty disappointing this year, especially since Karl Anthony Towns has been out. You would expect that Russell would be stepping up his game. Aside from this one, he really hasn't. I no longer consider him a future star. He only plays one side of the ball, and he isn't star-level efficient offensively. He's in his sixth NBA season, and I consider his All-Star selection in 2019 to be a little bit of a fluke. So, whoops, hold on. We're going to drop his intangibles to reflect that he is not, I don't consider him a star, more like an average starter. And his mid-range rating, that's way too high. Let's drop that down. And his passing numbers are also down. And overall consistency, that's not really there. So we dropped him 3 points in overall here. I think this is more indicative of his value. Could even see him dropping another point or two, depending on, are the 29 and 11 games going to be a consistent thing, or is it going to be twice a month? Is really the question. And Jarrett Culver, he's having a pretty solid sophomore year, rebounding the ball pretty effectively. So we're going to substantially increase his offensive rebound rate, and that bumps him to a 75 overall. And finally, Malik Beasley. He's having a career year, averaging 18 points, up from 11 the last 2 years. But there isn't actually a ton on him that I want to change, as he doesn't do much besides score. The Wolves are 30th defensively, and that's a reflection of their starting backcourt. So we're going to update a couple of his offensive ratings, just his draw foul ability, and then shot IQ, and we'll boost his rebound rate a couple points as that's slightly up. So that bumps him to a 79. Let's move on to the Spurs, who they upset the Clippers last night, 116 to 113, to move up to 3-4 on the year. Lamarcus Aldridge, he returned from injury. He had 16 points, 6 rebounds, shot only 6-16 from the field, and played 25 minutes. He's only played 103 minutes on the year, so I'll probably reevaluate his ratings after one more game. He'll probably drop 2 to 3 points, is my guess. DeMar DeRozan, he was quiet in this game with 9 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Probably had his hands full guarding Kawhi Leonard. DeJounte Murray, he bounced back from a dreadful shooting game with 21 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists on 9 of 18 shooting, while Patty Mills had 27 points, including 8 of 12 from the three-point line. So he played next to Murray quite a bit in this one. And as the Clippers, they have kind of a smallish backcourt when Paul George isn't out there. Paul George sat this one out, so they went with more Reggie Jackson and stuff. And the Spurs generally like Mills as like a two-guard, kind of like in the Seth Curry role, off the bench as like a microwave scorer. So he had a really good one here. And Devin Vassell, he had a career-high 12 points on 4 or 5 shooting. He's taking advantage of Derek White being out of the lineup. Derek White refractured the toe that he had surgery on in his during his first game back. He refractured it. So that's obviously not great. He'll probably miss like a month, is my guess. There's no timetable on him yet, but the team has the depth to compensate for him as long as the other young guys are staying healthy and playing well. Heading over to the Clippers, as I just mentioned, Paul George sat out this game. So it was Kawhi Leonard's turn to do some work. He had a great game against his former team with 30 points and 10 assists, shot 13 and 22 from the field. Patrick Beverly, he stepped up. He had 20 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. Although it is worth noting that the Spurs point guards combined for 48 points. That's kind of what Beverly's there for. Like, wasn't he all defense? But Nick Batum, he continued his resurgence also with 21 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, shot 8 of 12 from the field. On the season, he's averaging 10 points and 6 rebounds, shooting 53% from the field, 45% on threes. Last year, he shot 35% from the field, though he wasn't really trying. He's 44% for his career. He's playing like the guy who was making $25 million a year. He's on that Boris Diaw career arc where, the Hornets sign a guy to a big money contract, a role player, and then they end up not really performing. But then as soon as they join a veteran team, they start playing well again and help them and make a playoff run and stuff. So that bodes well for Gordon Hayward on his next team at least. But let's work on Batum to bring him up. We did talk about wanting to raise his ratings up. I don't think he's very clearly above Patrick Patterson at the moment. So let's raise his mid-range rating. His three-point rating is back to normal. He shot 39 or 40% in 2019. Shot IQ. We're going to bring up his defensive consistency, 10 points, his offensive consistency, 10 points, as I had those low because of his non-season in Charlotte, and that bumps him to a 78 overall. I could even see that going up a couple more points, maybe to like an 80, as he really is he's basically the sixth man on this team because Lou Williams hasn't been playing anywhere close to the level that he's typically played at. We're probably going to drop him in the future. He's playing a much smaller role under Ty Lue. His usage rate and assist rate are down, but he's also not shooting the ball better or more efficiently despite the smaller role. He's probably going to end up in the 81 range is my guess once we do get around to rating him. Probably maybe even lower, maybe even 80. Like, I don't think he should be rated higher than Beverly based on how he's producing at the moment. Let's move on to the Bulls, who they had an impressive comeback win against the Blazers, 111 to 108. 7 players were in double figures, so they are playing as a team under Billy Donovan. Kobe White and Zach LaVine, they combined for 39 points. Patrick Williams and Otto Porter, they combined for 33 points. And then off the bench, Garrett Temple and Thaddeus Young, they combined for 24 points. So nobody was particularly impressive, but just everybody was just solid all around. Everybody did their jobs. LaVine, he had 18 points, 9 assists in this one. Kobe White, he had 21 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. So they took advantage of playing against a bad defensive backcourt of Dame and CJ. There, I said it. Lauri Markkanen and Arcadia Kiono, they're going to miss the 4-game road trip due to contact tracing. The Bulls do have 2 players that tested positive for COVID-19 in Chandler Hutchison and Tomas Satoransky. So Lauri's already missed the last 3 games. He's going to be out 7 total, it looks like. So they're hanging on until he gets back. Otto Porter's probably going to go back to a bench role once Lauri's back. We're going to tweak Lauri up a little bit as he was playing really well prior to his absence. He looked like he was back to the player that he was in 2019. So we're just going to buff his 3-point rating back to normal. A lot of the rating work that we're doing so far this year is just restoration. Like, for example, rookie Rubio, we restored him back to where he was at in 2019. Batum, we restored back to where he was in 2019, and now we're doing the same thing with Lauri Markkanen, as sometimes the situation just leads to a decrease in numbers, and once things get resolved, the players go back to normal. So it raises him a point overall. Let's head over to the Blazers, who are not in a great situation. They dropped to 3-4. CJ and Dame, they combined for 50 points on 16 of 38 shooting, including 9 of 25 on threes. But this team can't stop anybody. They had some fool's gold when Dame carried them in the bubble. They are not a playoff team if they can't stop anybody defensively. They're 28th in defense again, But the offense this year is only 11th, whereas last year it was third because of Dame's heroics. This Robert Collington, he had a season high 14 points in this game, which is kind of indicative of the season that he's having. He usually averages 12 to 13, but he's only averaging 7 points right now. Derrick Jones Jr., he's averaging 6 points in 31 minutes, shooting 32% from the field. A lot of experts liked the Blazers offseason, but that's contingent on Covington and Jones making a difference on either end of the court, but especially on the defensive end. And that just hasn't happened yet. These guys don't get the fanfare that Andrew Wiggins and Kelly Oubre get playing for like the Golden State Warriors, but they basically have struggled just as badly. The difference is Wiggins and Oubre actually snapped out of it, and to this point, Covington and Jones haven't either. Although Covington did have this good game finally. They're probably going to drop in rating as well. I'm just going to hold off for another game or two before making that decision. But it's not looking good for the Blazers right now. We're probably also going to drop Nurkic and Rodney Hood as well. But we will increase CJ as he's been playing at a higher level than he typically has. He really looks like an all-star caliber player this year. Although Dame Lillard has also looked like not quite himself. Like, if I had to, based on their statistical production, I'd say Lillard's probably down to like a 91 and CJ's up to like an 89. But so they didn't lose too much from the guard position. They're still getting their points there. It's just the front court, or the wings rather, they're not really getting any type of production. And this was supposed to be an area that they resolved over the offseason. So that wraps it up for this edition of the 2K roster review. Is there a player that you think should be going up or down in rating in week 2 of the NBA season? Do you think I'm crazy for bashing the Blazers? Leave a comment, let me know. And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of our daily 2K roster content. It's going to help the channel grow, which ensures that I can continue to produce these daily. So thanks everyone for the support, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.